Okay, I think that we are streaming now. I'm just going to give this a second to make sure my stream comes live in YouTube on my little window here, and it seems like it has. So now, I should probably change the name of this stream. So let's just take a minute and set this up properly. We're not doing a charging system overview. We're going to do CyrCraft live stream number 9. We're going to talk about StarPusher. v1.5.2. And we're going to do another hardware overview. Let's call this a quick overview of LED pattern programming and display on the wheel, and I don't know, wheel hardware setup and wheel hardware setup. Okay, so now that's almost accurate if I can spell overview without the letter H. There we go. All right, so now we're ready to go. So in today's live stream, I'm going to quickly, I'm going to try to keep this under a half hour, just run through StarPusher v1.5.2 that we just released, and some of the new features of it, and just how to work your way around the interface, and what to expect as you're using it. And then we're going to take a sample project that we create on there. We're going to throw it on the wheel, and I'll show you how to get the SD card in and out of the wheel, and a couple things to be aware of as you're working with the wheel hardware. So with that, let's take a look at my side monitor here, and I will open up StarPusher. When you first open StarPusher, you're going to get this Project Manager tab. It's one of several tabs here. This is actually going to change soon. A couple of these tabs are going to move into drop-down menus. But right now, in v1.5.2, we've got our Project Manager tab. This lets us set some of the overall general settings for a project. And I should clarify what a project is. A StarPusher project is basically all of the files that get written to an SD card and put onto your Omega wheel. So when you've got different folders of files on the Omega wheel. Some of them are sequence folders, some of them are not. There's a bunch of different things you can do, settings you can set. We're going to set the global settings here on this Project Manager page for the project, aka for the SD card image that you're putting onto your Omega wheel. So I'm not going to go too deep in the woods on these right now. There's a bunch of settings, and our next tab is our file browser. This is how we're going to bring files from various places on a computer into our project folder. We don't currently have a project folder active yet. But for the UI overview, I'll continue with Pattern Sequencer. This is where you're going to bring in an audio track and overlay your patterns over that audio track. We've got a Pattern Visualizer. You can also use the Pattern Sequencer as a pattern visualizer, but viewing one pattern at a time without the sequencer timeline is a little bit easier for some uses. So we've got a separate Pattern Visualizer here. And then we've got a couple kind of utility tabs. There's a single pattern formatter, which is duplicates some functions of the pattern visualizer. The single pattern formatter might actually just get erased entirely. The batch pattern formatter is used for taking an entire project or a folder of images from anywhere in your system and resizing that whole folder to fit a different size wheel with a different number of LEDs in it, etc. And then we've got our Help tab, which is going to go to the Help menu. but our help tab currently just has a bunch of shortcuts, keyboard shortcuts for the different parts of the StarPusher app. And then up here we've got this feature, send debug event log. And you can basically type a note. If you're having any issues with StarPusher, you can type a note in here and send it to us. And that's about the whole UI here. We've got a file menu. First thing I'm going to do after opening this is I'm going to create a new project. I'll save it right on my desktop. We'll call it Livestream 9, and I'm going to tell it that we're using 365 LEDs because that will line up with the wheel that I've got over there to kind of test these on. And I'm going to hit create, and you'll see that this project manager page has populated the project name here as Livestream 9. Number of LEDs is 365. We're going to leave everything else just the way it is right now. We're not going to get into those details right now. But you will notice, so over on this side in our kind of navigation panel to the left here, which you'll see in pretty much every tab, you'll see that navigation panel. We've now got under My Projects, which is, or Recent Projects, depending on which version of StarPusher you're using, highlighted in green says Livestream 9. And so I can click around to different areas on the computer here. There's kind of some quick links here, downloads folder, desktop folder, or I can go to the project Livestream 9. And we can see a couple things in here. spproj.xml is currently what we're using to identify that this is a project folder so that StarPusher knows this is the root folder of the project. And then we've got this SD contents folder, which is actually the folder that StarPusher will write to the SD card. You don't want to mess with anything manually inside of this SD contents folder. Well, that's not true. There's certain things you can mess with, there's certain things you can't. We won't get into that too deeply right now. But what we do want to do is go to the next tab now and use the file browser feature here. And I'm going to actually surf through my Dropbox so I can use a quick link here. If you have different drives installed on your computer, you can jump between them. I'm going to go into Dropbox. I'm going to go into Night Sky. I'm going to go to StarPusher, and I'm going to go to this folder because I know it has a bunch of stuff that I want, such as this audio file here. I'm going to copy that in there. Whenever you drag a file between these two windows in your file browser panel or tab of StarPusher, it's going to ask you if you want to move it or copy it. I generally go with copy so that I'm not taking stuff out of another project. And actually this doesn't have the other folder that I wanted, which should have miscellaneous images. There we go. I'm going to grab this miscellaneous images folder as well, drag it in, copy that. And now we've got some files that we can start to work with. I've got my audio file, and I've got my miscellaneous images folder. I can use this arrow here to kind of go back up a level. And now let's jump straight into the pattern sequencer and create a sequence. So I've still got that folder open over here with my, my sound file and my miscellaneous images. I'm going to drag the sound file right onto the timeline here. Just like that. I can hit the plus sign on my keyboard to zoom in, and let's play this sound. Make sure the audio levels are set right. Yeah, that probably works. You can hear me over that. And I'm gonna then double click this this miscellaneous images folder, and let's resize this so that we can get a nice large view of the wheel and look at some of these images in here. All right, so I'm going to just grab a file here. I'm going to drag it onto the timeline, and it's going to play this file as soon as I hit start now. I am going to drag this right to 0. There's actually a bug in this version of StarPusher where if you don't have a file right at the 0 point of the timeline, and it can be anything, you can have a file that is just a single black pixel if you want the wheel to be dark at this point, and it will make the entire wheel dark as long as you have your duplication setting on, which is, I cover that in another video. I'm probably going to end up doing a series of videos kind of going over various features, settings for patterns and whatnot, but let's just say for now we're going to use an image that is going to show as soon as this sequence starts. So we're going to see this as I press play. So we see that it's playing this pattern. And we can also see that there's like a little glitch up there because our number of LEDs for this wheel is 365, but this image is set to 360 wide. So if I turn on duplication points, we can see the image is playing on LEDs 1 through 360, and then right there it starts to duplicate and play the image again. So in order to get rid of that, we're going to resize this to be the same width, and now even with duplication points like turned on so that we can view them, we can see that there's none visible. So this is playing the same number of LEDs wide as the wheel LED strips are long. And we can see now that that transition point between LED 365 and LED 1 is not apparent in this image. So one of the first concepts to think about here as you are trying to get LED patterns to look good on your wheel is that the width of the image makes a difference in how it's going to display on the wheel. If the image that you are trying to display is narrower than the width of the wheel, and actually at this point I should probably jump over to just the pattern visualizer to show this concept. I'm going to drag that image onto the wheel. We can see that it's kind of glitchy up at the top here because this one is still set at 360, but I'm going to change it to 365. Hit enter there, and now it is smooth. So what we're seeing happen here is we can see our image over on the side here. Let me pause this. We can see our image on the side here, and we can see our wheel over here. Basically what we're taking is we're taking one horizontal row from this image at a time, and we're mapping it to the LEDs in the wheel. And then we're doing this many times per second, as we're currently set to 80 frames per second. And I can actually grab this bar here and scrub through the image. And you can see that we're getting one of those horizontal rows of pixels from the image mapped to the wheel. And I can change our view mode here to a line view so that's a little bit clearer to see how that maps out. So basically if you take your Omega wheel and you straighten it out into a flat line, it would kind of look like this, and this is how the LEDs would be displayed on it. So there is, so that's how that works. If I were to change this image to something like maybe half of this, let's call it, let's see, 365 divided by 2, roughly 182. 365 isn't divisible by 2, but and I'll put it back in wheel view. We can see that it's, I'm going to turn on duplication points. We can see that it plays the image once, 184 pixels of it, up to here, and then it plays it again, up to pixel number 364, and then it duplicates the first pixel of the image again right here before it goes back to LED number 1. But we've essentially doubled the, or we've halved the resolution of the image, but we've doubled the number of times that it will play across the surface of the wheel. And you can do interesting stuff with this. I can change this to a different multiple or factor. Let's change this to 73, and we can see it's now playing 5 times around the wheel. You can see these duplications markers in green. And you can turn on wheel section markers as well to see what section it is in purple there that things are on. I can make this, if I make it like 91 or 92 pixels, then we'll get that image. It's going to be a little bit glitchy right at that spot because 91 doesn't go into, wait, 91 does go into 365, doesn't it? Times 4. It doesn't, it's not a perfect matchup, but it kind of works. Anyway, so that's how these images map. And then the other variable that we can change, let's set this back to 365. The other variable that we can change here is the height of the image. So as I said, we're doing for 80 frames a second. It's just playing through this at 80 frames a second. And because the image is 360 pixels tall, it's taking it, I don't know, 360 divided by 80 times seconds, seconds to play through this image. But I can have this, I can have that, and it's going to play a lot faster. I could double that, and it's going to play a lot slower. So the height of your image is also a factor in how the image is going to display. So now that we've talked about that a little bit, let's jump back over to our sequence editor. I'm going to hit escape to go back to the 0 point on the timeline. I'm just going to drag 2 or 3 images in. Oh, Sean, could you turn that light back on? Thanks. I'm going to drag 2 or 3 images onto the timeline, and then we'll export it and put this on the wheel and talk about wheel hardware a little bit. We'll see you Monday. So let's maybe go to this pattern after that. And I was zoomed way too far in there, wasn't I? All right, so probably want that to change right about there. I probably want this to be a little bit of a faster. Let's see, let's have this come in right at the chime there. Okay, and even faster than that, we'll change the height to 150 so this image that starts out kind of pinkish, or starts white and then goes to pink and then back to white, it's just going to fade in and out from white to pink on the wheel as it kind of loops around scanning this image. So actually I want that to come in even earlier. And it's always good to err on coming in a little bit early with a pattern. It seems to be less noticeable if there's any like timing differences from when you start the sequence to when your music starts, etc. If the pattern comes in a little bit earlier, it's less jarring to the eye than if you hear the beat change or whatever event in the song or whatever you want to kind of be associated with a visual change. It seems to make more sense if the image comes in first and then the audio comes in. To me anyways. Maybe I'm totally wrong about that. Maybe other people feel different, but and then maybe I want to throw in this pattern. And I want to make this 365 as well. And then maybe I'll go to this like comedy type pattern. Not comedy like funny, like comety like in the sky, a comet. And we can see that this pattern is only 18 pixels wide. I only want it to display around the wheel 3 times though, so I'm going to change that to 121 pixels and see what that does. That should be good. Alright, and I want to slow it down because that is jarring. It's like very stroby. Yeah, that's nice. So we've got 4 patterns in there. I might leave my sequence here, but let's just back out a little bit and watch it for a second. And I'll do one more here just for fun. I want this to be, if I make this 240, it's going to play around 3 times around the wheel because it's doubled, and sometimes you got to get a little bit mathy. Well, actually not quite 240, maybe like 241. Got to go a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller sometimes to get things to line up. 242 looks good. That's nice. So there's our sequence. At this point, I'm going to hit Save Sequence. I haven't actually created a sequence for this yet, so it's going to prompt me to enter a name for this sequence and a DIY number. So DIY number refers to these buttons on the remote. Let's actually go to the side desk, and there we go. So on our handheld remote, we've got a bunch of buttons. These solid colored buttons up here, they refer to the different folders that are available on your SD card to access from your Night Sky LED controller inside the wheel. There's a bunch of other features on this remote, but the DIY numbers refer here. So if I set this to DIY number 1, and then, or if I save that sequence that we were working on to DIY number 1, then when I write that project to the SD card on the wheel, and I hit DIY number 1 right here, it'll start playing the sequence. So that's what that is about. I'm going to hit OK here. I'm going to enter a name for this. So I'll call this, I'll just call it Livestream 9. And I'll assign it to DIY number 1. You've got 6 DIY buttons on the remote. That remote is going to be obsolete eventually, and we'll be able to do even more with this. But for right now, you got 6 sequences that you can have on the wheel. At any one time. And if you want to change out and have other sequences, it's as simple as just pulling the SD card out of the wheel, sticking another one in that has other sequences on there. For now anyway, you have to take the SD card out manually. But with Wi-Fi, we've got Wi-Fi built into the wheel, and we're adding more and more features to that. So eventually you'll just be able to wirelessly send your sequences to the wheel rather than physically take an SD card in and out. But I'm going off on a tangent here. Let me hit create here. It just created and saved this file onto our SD card. And at this point, I am going to, let's go in here. I am going to look in our file browser, and I'm going to show you kind of how things are set up inside of this SD contents folder that I've said not to manually put anything into. But so we see here that folder 11 now is suffixed, has been appended with the name of the sequence that we just created for DIY 1. So folder 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16 are mapped to those DIY buttons. They hold all of the patterns for the sequence that we just created. So we can see that these patterns are now in there, and they are also suffixed with the size information for that pattern that we put into the timeline, as well as the name of the sequence that is being used in. So if these files are messed with, if the names are changed, if the YouTube's giving me an error. Hopefully nothing's wrong, and this actually records okay. So if the names of these files are changed, or the locations of these files are changed, then your sequence is not going to work. So we've built StarPusher to handle making sure everything's named properly and in the right place and formatted properly, so that the wheel can display what you create. we've got these other folders here, the folders 1 through 10. You can actually manually change stuff in these folders, and we're going to change the UI so that it's a little bit clearer what you can and can't touch. But for right now, remember, it's okay for you to put files into folders 1 through 10, or take files out of folders 1 through 10. And it shouldn't break your wheel, it shouldn't affect anything, unless you put something of the wrong format into it, which is not possible to do if you are using this file browser tab. As even if I take like a JPEG image or a TIFF image or a PNG image, and if I drag that into a project folder, StarPusher is going to realize that I'm trying to put an image into a project folder, and it's going to convert it to the proper format file for the wheel to display, for the LED controller to read and then translate to LED lights. So we're kind of in the midst of making that a little bit clearer of how to do that without actually manually changing anything in the SD contents folder. But for right now, know that you can, and actually you probably should, because the wheel can get confused and just do nothing when it lights up if you don't have something inside of folder 1 or whichever folder you've set as your start folder, which, you know what, actually I don't think we're using the, yeah, okay, we are. So you can set the start folder to anything. So if I went to like put this, I'm going off on too many tangents right now, aren't I? I'm going to finish this one, and then we're just going to throw this in the wheel and take care of that. So I'm going to say don't change the start folder. You can change the start folder if you want to, but generally I just leave the start folder as folder number 1, and then I just throw some miscellaneous images into folder 1 so that I can use them. And I'm going to just manually do that right now, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to take these files that we did format already, and I'm going to drag them over to folder 1. It's going to say I can only manually modify sequence folders 1 through 10. I'm going to say OK to that. It should have brought them in here. Oh no, I have to do this. Ooh, we might have a bug here. Well, I can do this the other way. I can just grab them from the miscellaneous images folder and drag them in. Yeah, okay, so we have a little bit of a bug here, but as I drag stuff in manually into this SD contents folder number 1, it's allowing me to, because it's not folder 11 through 16, which you absolutely don't want to do this with, but I'm just populating this folder with some files that we can display on the wheel. The concept of the start folder is that's going to be the folder that the LED controller first tries to play images out of when the wheel boots up. If the wheel boots up and there's nothing in the start folder, it's going to flash red, and then it's just going to, it's either going to stay white or it's going to go black until you navigate to a folder that does have images in it, which can be folder 11. You can directly access folder 11 and play stuff out of it if you want, but it might look like a bug or like there's something wrong with the wheel if you don't have images inside of your start folder and you start the wheel up and then nothing happens. You just got to make sure that you are in a folder, that the wheel is currently trying to play from a folder that has patterns in it. Anyways, at this point, I'm going to save this. I'm going to write this project to an SD card. I should actually install an SD card into my computer. So let me do that. So any like USB SD card reader will work. StarPusher is going to it's going to avoid writing to any drives other than USB drives on your computer, and it's going to warn you that whatever drive you try to write to, it's going to erase all the contents of that drive, and it's going to write your project contents to that drive. So I just inserted this SD card into my computer, drive F, and let me reload this. We can see the drive F is now listed there. That's the stuff that's already in there. If I now use this write project to SD card option, it's going to tell me to select a drive. It's only listing F because F is the only USB drive that I've got available, so it's not going to let me try to overwrite an internal drive, and even a lot of external USB drives won't show up on this list because it's just looking for flash storage, really. But I'm going to select F anyways because you may have several USB drives plugged into the computer. You want to make sure that it's highlighted, or well, it's not highlighted, it's like darkened. And I'm going to hit continue, and then it's going to give me a warning. It's going to say this process will overwrite all info for whatever the name of the project is on that drive, if there's a current project on that drive, which I had named May the 4th, 2022 for the May the 4th video we did a couple months ago. It's going to tell you what files and what folders will be deleted. This is just a way to let you know that you're going to lose all the information on this drive. You're going to overwrite it, and then it's going to say, OK, erase the drive, or cancel. And I'm going to hit OK, erase the drive, and write the project. So it's going to do that, and it's going to try to eject the SD card. Sometimes Windows is slow after writing to the drive. It has to do some cleanup stuff, and it won't let StarPusher eject the drive automatically, which we might actually remove the feature of telling it to eject the drive automatically, because half the time it says ejection failed, and that's because Windows is kind of doing some background stuff to clean up the drive before it's going to let it be ejected. I'm just going to hit OK here, and then I can right-click on disk F over here and click eject drive. It'll tell me it's safe to remove the storage device. I'm going to unplug this, and now let me switch over to the side bench. There we go. So now I'm going to take the SD card out of my SD card reader. This has our project image on it. And here's what a night sky PCB, this is our LED controller PCB. There's what it looks like. You're going to be inserting this into the wheel, but it's not going to look like this. And actually, before we go to the wheel, maybe I'll just jump over to the back bench and show you a little bit of what the hardware inside the wheel looks like. So here's another night sky board. The night sky is plugged in inside. I'm definitely going too deep in the weeds showing you this right now, but just for context of what you're actually plugging this into. Night sky kind of lives, the night sky PCB circuit board lives inside of your power pack right here. There's a logic board cover that goes over it, gets screwed down. And then there's like a notch in it right here that you can insert your SD card into, or remove your SD card from. That notch is reachable from outside the wheel as well. So let's bring our SD card over to the wheel on the table here and take a look at that. So I'm going to switch views. There we go. It's almost like I planned this. Almost. All right, so here's our project image, and I've got a pair of tweezers here. I've already got an SD card in here, and I like to do this when the wheel's powered off. I don't want to pull the SD card out and put the SD card in while the wheel is powered on, because you could corrupt the SD card, and that's no fun. So try to avoid that. I've got the wheel powered off right now. I'm going to take the old SD card out with my tweezers here, and I don't know. Can I get a good view here? The light is not great here. I'm going to do this over at the other bench, actually. Let's go back to our side bench. We should have enough light there to show what is going on here. Okay, there we go. So we can see the other SD card in there. So I'm just going to remove the old SD card. Can I do this? I'm not actually like looking down in the hole. I'm trying to look up at my monitor as I'm doing this, which is a little annoying, but there we go. We can pull it right out. And I can grab the new SD card. Oh, can I? Can I do this while holding this thing in the air and only watching it on a monitor? I don't know. Let's try to grab it in this direction. I like to grab it so these are like angled. The tweezers are angled. I like to grab it kind of in that direction. It's a little easier for me. I don't know. Probably personal preference. But I'm just going to try to set this SD card down in there. Get it roughly in place, and then, is that right? Yeah. This is really hard if I'm trying to like look at a monitor and do it that way. There. And then I just push it down flat. And that's it. We're ready to boot this section of wheel up. So I'm going to go back to the other table and I'll show you how we do that. Okay. So we've got our power plug right here. Before I just unplug this, I'm going to explain a little bit about what the boot process is and what the controller in here is trying to do as this boots up. So when I pull the plug here, it turns power onto the wheel. And there is a status LED on the night sky board, the LED controller that's inside of this hole. And that's going to tell us some information about what's going on as it's booting. And then the color of the LED lights, the color of the wheel itself, the color of the wheel's LEDs, are also going to tell us some information as it's booting. And so we're working on written documentation to kind of share all of this stuff. Hopefully that'll be up on the website in the next week. Basically, first thing it's going to do as it boots up, it's going to look to see if you've got any new firmware. So you can actually put if there's a firmware upgrade, all you do is you put the firmware onto the SD card. It's just a single file. You include it on the SD card. And then when you start this up, it'll look for firmware. If it finds firmware, it's going to flash blue as it installs the firmware. Not flash. The status LED is going to glow blue from inside this hole. It'll install the firmware. After if there is no firmware, it's going to go white for a second, the status LED inside here, while it boots and kind of organizes itself and reads the configuration for your project. And then it'll go purple, and it'll stay purple for a few seconds if you have not set up any Wi-Fi login information for this project. If there is Wi-Fi login information, it's going to stay purple while it's trying to connect to Wi-Fi. And if it connects to Wi-Fi, the wheel will flash green then. And sometimes it also glitches, and like as it's processing, it'll show yellow during that process. Just ignore the yellow. That's just a timing issue that we'll probably fix in another version of the firmware. But basically, if the status light gets to purple and stays purple, it is not connected to Wi-Fi, or you don't have Wi-Fi configured. And if it gets to green, it has connected to Wi-Fi. And then after it tries to connect to Wi-Fi, if you've put in Wi-Fi credentials in your project, it'll play the patterns on the wheel. So I made that probably sound a bit more complicated than it is. Let's just watch and see what happens. I'll try to narrate as it goes if I can be fast enough. So I'm going to pull the power plug here. Inside, our light it was white for a second, and then it went purple. You saw it flash yellow-ish for a second. Because I didn't put any Wi-Fi credentials in, it's not trying to connect to Wi-Fi. It just went into playing the pattern after flashing purple on the wheel momentarily. Oh, my whole table just moved. All right, so now we can use our remote control. The red arrows will move you through the different patterns in the folder that you're in. So this is that blue-green kind of crosshatch pattern that we put in the folder first. And if I press the next one, we've got this kind of like shimmery purple pattern that plays. If I go up again, we've got this watery blue pattern. And this next one is the comet-like pattern, and it's currently set to 18 pixels wide, so it's actually repeating every 18 pixels this pattern around the entire wheel. Of course, we're not looking at a whole wheel right now, but you get the idea. And here's this kind of like chaser type pattern that was in there. All right, and now I can actually put the wheel in blackout mode if I don't want it to do anything while I'm like, you know, if you're setting up the wheel, you got it all powered on, you got it ready to roll on the stage. You can put it in blackout mode, all the lights will be off until you take it out of blackout mode, or until you hit your DIY button. So we set our sequence to DIY 1. So as soon as I hit this DIY button right here, it's going to start playing our sequence. So I didn't think about how to play the music along with this, so we're going to have to pretend the music is there. But if I just hit this button once, it's going to play through those patterns in our sequence in the order and at the time stamps that we put them into the timeline. So here it goes. It's going to play this one for a few seconds. It's going to go into that one for a few seconds. It's going to play that one for a few seconds. And it's going to play the comedy one. And then this kind of cool, trippy one for a few minutes, because we actually didn't tell it when to stop playing. So this is our sequence that we created. I can now jump back into folder 1, which is going to be this first solid color dot. And there we go. We're back out of the sequence. Yeah, and that flashing white that we saw right there is if it didn't properly get the command that you sent. I wasn't pointing the remote directly at it. So the IR remote does have to be pretty close to this hole where our status LED is. I don't know if you can see the purple, and you can probably just barely see the purple status LED inside there shining. Yeah, there you go. You can see it a little bit. It doesn't really look purple on the camera here. I don't know if it does on your screens or not. But that is where you want to be pointing the remote at. And actually, the white flashing was more likely it was that I hit the W button here by accident. If you ever want to figure out which section, if you wanted to make it obvious which section of wheel the night sky is that you want to point this remote at, then you can use this W button to kind of identify it. It makes those lights, it makes the status LED in there blink. Actually, I think we should make that a little bit cleaner, that feature. Anyways, off into another tangent again there. That's the basics of how to set up a pattern, how patterns work, how to get them onto the wheel. And yeah, I haven't really talked too much about hardware yet, other than showing you how to get the SD card in and out of the wheel. I am going to quickly take out the wheel internals, show you what that looks like, show you how to reinstall them, and a couple things to watch out for there. So let's jump into that. Before we do that, I'm going to talk about charging. So this power port that we have these little pins that plug into, I plug that pin in, it turns the wheel off. But I can also plug in a charging cable. So we've got these battery chargers and little adapters here that bring power from your battery charger into the wheel. If I wanted to charge the wheel, this would be plugged into the wall. It's not at the moment. And I would just plug the end of this cable right into that power port. That'll charge our wheel. Of course, it's not charging it right now. It's not turning it off because we've got this plugged into into there without any power. So make sure that these are powered on so you're not just draining your batteries further if you plug in your power cables. But yeah, the first thing I want to do if I am disassembling the wheel, you should only ever need to disassemble your wheel if you need to like quickly swap out a battery from the battery pack in there, or if you need to like, so you can charge the batteries with the wheels assembled, or if you don't have time to wait for a full charge, you notice you're low on batteries and you have a show in 10 minutes, you can pull batteries out and just throw new ones in. So I'll show you how to do that. But you never want to do that without first loosening this set screw right here. So there's a little nylon plastic set screw. This one has a little bit of orange paint on it to make it a little bit more noticeable. This set screw keeps the battery pack from bouncing around during use. You want to make sure you get that out of the wheel. And you're going to have one of these, I don't have one on the table here. You're going to have a multi-tool that just has all the sizes of wrench that you need for your wheel. But make sure that's all the way out of there. If you don't take that out of there, or even if you just loosen it but leave it in there part way, some of the internals can catch on the wheel and you can damage something. Don't ask me how I know. You can do damage to the wheel by trying to like force the components out of the wheel when they're still being caught on this. Even if you think that this set screw is loose, it could still be catching on stuff. So I like to say remove it entirely, just to be safe. And I do send a couple extras with the wheel in case you remove it entirely and drop it somewhere. You'll have a kit of spare parts with your wheel. So, so hopefully you don't do that, and if you do, you know that you've got more on hand. And then I'm going to remove the coupler bolts from that end of the wheel. And at this point, I can just begin to slide the coupler out of the wheel. Let's see, can I zoom in here a little bit? That doesn't look too bad. All right. So as I'm sliding that coupler out of the wheel, we're going to see a couple things. We're going to see that there are all kinds of wires and cables that are connected to this coupler. These ribbon cables, these flexible cables, are they go to each of the LED strips. In order to remove these, there's like a little latch that you pull up on. I'll get a close-up of this in a minute to show how this works. But I want to pull up on that latch to loosen it, and then slide the LED strip out. If I don't pull up on that latch to loosen this and I just try to pull the LED strip out, you're probably going to damage your ribbon cable, which is going to be a pain in the butt. Unless you have some soldering skills, you're probably going to have to then replace the LED strip, which is pretty simple, but it's still like a 5-10 minute job that you don't want to do, just when you're trying to do a quick battery swap or something like that. So make sure you definitely loosen these clips that are holding the battery, holding the LED ribbon cables in place. So I pulled those back, and pulled this one back. All right, and now my LED strips are loose. I'm also going to kind of pull them back flat against the outside because the rest of the internals need to be able to slide past them. And you shouldn't have to pull too hard. There's going to be a little bit of friction, but you should be able to just pull all of your internals right out of the wheel, just like that. And then I'll show a close-up of how I've got these ribbon cables aligned as I pulled stuff out. You also want to keep the ribbon cables aligned this same way when you are inserting the components back inside of the wheel after you are ready to put stuff back in the wheel. So we've got our entire power pack here. Let me zoom back out a little bit. So we've got our power pack right here. And we can see we've got our SD card. I can power it off now. I can't keep the power plug in there while inserting and removing the power pack because obviously it sticks out of the hole and just wouldn't work. But you can see we've got our SD card right there. You know what, maybe I will zoom back in. So you can see we've got our SD card right there inside the power pack. And I think, wasn't there 3 things? Oh yes, the other thing, which isn't done on this one yet, because this is a build that's in progress. These batteries are not labeled by the manufacturer as to their polarity. So I like to write the polarity on every battery, a couple different spots. And sorry, the lighting isn't great for close-ups on this overhead camera, but I'm going to say plus and minus here, plus and minus there. So here's our battery. There are both sides are flat on this battery, so it's not, well, almost flat. Both sides are pretty flat on these batteries, so it's not as easy. Can I keep focus on this? There we go. So yeah, it's not like super easy to remember which side is positive and negative, but this side that is like completely flat and featureless, that is the negative side of the battery. This side that is flat but kind of has some more features going on, that is the positive side. And you can kind of see a plus sign on there, the way that the metal is formed on this end. There's like 4 sides to it, and it's kind of like a plus sign. Yeah, this end is the positive side. Positive side is going to go towards your power connector, your power pin here. Again, I don't have this one marked yet, but we've been painting in bright orange a plus and a minus on there so that you don't get those backwards. You know, we've been lucky. The way that this is designed is that it should not immediately damage anything. It's not going to immediately fry anything if you put the battery in backwards. But if you leave it in there, there are things that can overheat. The LED strips themselves, if they get reverse voltage, they get pretty warm. I haven't killed one this way, but I imagine that it is possible. So you don't want to put your battery in backwards, at the very least, because it's going to be annoying to not realize it until after you have the wheel back together, and then you'll have to pull it apart again. It will drain the battery because you're getting some heat loss through the LED strips with them plugged in backwards. Not a good thing to do. It could cause more damage than we have seen in our development and testing so far. Luckily, we haven't seen damage, but we have seen the potential of damage, because anytime you have electronic parts overheating and reverse current going to them, that's bad. So don't do that. Just don't do it. All right, so those are the main 3 things to watch for if you ever need to disassemble your wheel. Make sure that you remove this set screw, the white nylon set screw that's next to the power port. Make sure that you kind of carefully unplug the LED strips from these coupler connectors here, and make sure you don't put the battery in backwards. Those are the things. I am getting a little bit burnt out, and we're like way past the time that I thought we would be for this, so I'm just going to quickly show you how to put the wheel back together. And I'm going to call it a day for now. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to orient these LED strips back towards the sides here, like we talked about a few moments ago. So they're brought back against the sides, and they are also aligned with the locations of the strips. So we have different LED strips in different positions here. I call this one the inside or the center strip because it faces the inside of the wheel towards the performer. And then the other 2 are both outer strips, but one of them is at the top when the wheel is laying this way with the coupler bolts facing up, and one of them is at the bottom. So I call the top and the bottom. These strips, actually this wheel is not already labeled, but they should be, or they will be before this gets sent out, labeled with which position they go in. But you want them to be flush against, you know, on the opposite side, on the inside wall, you know, according to where their LED strip is, so that they are sitting flush so that you can slide this power pack alongside it as you reassemble the wheel. my battery back inside of here. Get my power plug out of there. And then I got to do a little bit of gymnastics with this power pack on the table so that it's easy to get things back in place. So slide that pigtail. Oh, the other thing I should show while this is out is a little bit of the anatomy of the power pack. So we can use the same power pack for any size wheel. This whole side, everything to the right side of the battery here is an adjustment sleeve for this pigtail on here. And that's one of our patent pending designs for these wheels, is the adjustability of this pigtail here. So you can use the same internal for any size wheel. So like the radius that this is curved at and everything works for all the size LED wheels that we make. This one is actually a bit long for this section of wheel because we haven't sized it to this wheel yet, because this is a build that's in progress. But basically, you loosen these two screws here, and you can slide the cable up inside. You can pull it out further. You can resize this power pack for any size wheel. With the exception of the coupler. The coupler is bent to a specific radius for every wheel. But again, I'm going off on a tangent. So I'm going to like turn the whole power pack around this way so that I can slide the pigtail in first. And there's other ways to do this. If you have more space than the table that I'm showing this on, then it's not as much of an issue. But when you are working in a tighter area, it's helpful to kind of do it this way and kind of uncurl it and then put the pigtail adjuster section in. If you run into anything where it's like feeling hard to push in, don't fight past that. Sometimes it's just that the pigtail wire like will fold back on itself, especially this one since it's not adjusted to the right size for this wheel yet. So I felt some resistance there, and I didn't try to force past that. Really important, nothing on this wheel should ever have to be forced. If you were feeling like you have to force this power pack into the wheel or force it, or like pull really hard to get it out of the wheel, you're probably damaging something. Make sure you got your nylon set screw all the way out so that that's not causing it. And then just kind of jiggle stuff until it feels like things are moving freely. So I do feel a little bit of friction as like the main body of the power pack goes through past the ribbon cables, but it slides pretty easily. So I just kind of slide it here, and then we're ready to plug our LED strips back into the wheel. There we go. We got the bottom one first there. Now we'll get the top one. Make sure that these clips are pulled back, and then make sure that the clips are pushed down so that that LED strip is latched on tightly there. And then the same thing here. There it goes. Slide that into place. And then there's a little bit of, you want to make sure that the power pack is rotated in the right direction here. So when you first plug it in, I don't know if this is going to be visible on camera, but let me put it in blackout mode so it's easier to see inside there. The orientation of that charge port in there is a little bit like rotated this direction right now. So I'm going to put my power pin in there and just kind of like wiggle it backwards, pull it towards me, while I put the set screw back in. And this lets me kind of like adjust where things sit. So this set screw, it keeps things from bouncing around, but it also lets you kind of fine tune the position of the power pack so that you can get your power pins in and out easily, get your SD card in and out easily. And it just needs to go snug. You also, because these are nylon, it's also nice, you cannot over tighten them. Was that all visible? That's probably all visible. You can't over tighten them. Once they are snug, the wrench, the torque wrench, or sorry, the hex wrench is just gonna slip, and it's not gonna tighten anymore. So you can't like damage anything by over tightening that piece. So we'll turn blackout back off. And there it is. I don't think I have anything else to show on this right now. The last thing you definitely want to do is put these screws into the coupler. But yeah, you're ready to take this and play on the wheel. I'm sure that there are plenty of things I've forgotten. I'm going to be working on written documentation and answering any questions people have. For anybody who's receiving their wheels now, I'm available to do Zoom calls to help walk through any of this stuff. And I don't think I have anything more to say. Let me get back over to the computer here. I'm going to power this off. Okay, so that should kind of cover the entire workflow of your wheel. Did it stop? Are we still recording? Yeah, we're still live. All right. So that should cover kind of what you need to know to get started working with the wheel. There are many more details, as you can probably tell from all of the tangents that I went down. But yeah, those are the basics of how to set up a project for the wheel, how to set up a sequence for the wheel. There's a lot of stuff, a lot of cool stuff we didn't cover, like setting motion triggers, using motion reactive modes, using a lot of the different effects that are available in real time on the wheel, and a lot of various other more, I don't want to say complicated, but more in-depth features of StarPusher and Night Sky. So yeah, we'll do more videos on those. Let me know if you guys have any questions, and if anybody actually watched a full hour of this, thank you. And let me know, yeah, let me know what's helpful. Goodbye. Oh, I don't even know if I'm still streaming right now. The YouTube connection was like so far behind that it's like 3 or 4 minutes behind. So I'm watching through, there we go. I'm watching through the last few minutes of this, and I have no idea what it's doing right now. If it's actually playing that live right now, I guess it would be playing that live right now. So I'm waiting for it to finish before I actually end the stream up here. We'll see how this goes. Oh, it looks like we are there. Okay, and then the stream.